The fireman found a kitten in the ashes, but what he found in the family was even more precious. The wail of the siren cut through the crisp autumn air, a sound Daniel Thompson had grown accustomed to, yet it still sent a jolt of adrenaline through his veins. He slammed his locker shut, the metallic clang echoing in the otherwise quiet firehouse of Harmony Creek, Ohio. A small town, nestled amidst rolling farmland, Harmony Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and a house fire was a community tragedy. Daniel, at 26, was the newest member of the Harmony Creek Fire Department. He transferred from Cincinnati 6 months prior, seeking a slower pace of life, a refuge from a past he didn't often speak of. He'd found solace in the routine of the firehouse, the camaraderie of his fellow firefighters, and the profound satisfaction of serving a community. He was still finding his feet, still building the deep connections that came with time, but he felt a growing sense of belonging. "Structure fire, 14 Maple Drive," barked Captain Miller, a burly man with a salt and pepper mustache and eyes that had seen too much. Reports of occupants trapped. Daniel's heart clenched. Trapped occupants. The worst-case scenario. He pulled on his heavy turnout gear, the familiar weight both reassuring and daunting. He checked his oxygen tank, the hiss of escaping air a sharp reminder of the dangers ahead. He was ready. He had to be. The drive to Maple Drive was a blur of flashing lights and roaring engines. As they rounded the corner, Daniel saw it. A 2-story farmhouse, engulfed in flames. Thick, black smoke billowed into the sky, obscuring the setting sun and casting an eerie orange glow over the scene. The heat radiating from the blaze was intense, even from a distance. Neighbors stood huddled on the lawn across the street, their faces etched with fear and disbelief. Children cried, clutching their parents' legs. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning wood and plastic, a smell that would forever be seared into Daniel's memory. "Thompson, you're with me?" Captain Miller yelled over the roar of the flames. "We're going in." Reports of a family on the 2nd floor. Daniel nodded, his throat tight. He followed Captain Miller towards the inferno, his training kicking in. Every step was deliberate, every sense heightened. The heat intensified with each foot closer, the crackling and popping of the fire a deafening symphony of destruction. They entered through the front door, a gaping maw of charred wood and shattered glass. The interior was a hellscape. Flames licked at the walls, consuming everything in their path. Visibility was near zero, the smoke so thick it felt like a physical presence, choking and blinding. "Stay low," Captain Miller shouted, his voice muffled by his respirator. They crawled on their hands and knees, the heat searing through their protective gear. Daniel could feel the floorboards groaning beneath them, threatening to give way. He swept his hand in front of him, searching for any sign of life. They reached the stairs, a treacherous ascent of burning wood and crumbling plaster. The heat was almost unbearable. Daniel could hear the frantic shouts of other firefighters outside, the roar of the water hoses battling the flames. Halfway up the stairs, Captain Miller found the first victim, an elderly woman, unconscious but breathing. He radioed for assistance and began carrying her down. Daniel pressed on, alone now, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached the 2nd floor, a maze of smoke-filled rooms. He crawled from room to room, calling out, his voice hoarse and strained. "Hello? Is anyone here?" Silence. Only the relentless crackle of the fire. He was about to give up, to turn back, when he heard it. A faint, high-pitched meow. It was barely audible, almost lost in the chaos, but it was there. Daniel followed the sound, his hope rekindled. He crawled towards a small bedroom at the end of the hall. The door was partially closed, with debris. He pushed it open, a wave of heat and smoke washing over him. There, huddled in a corner, beneath a child's bed, was a tiny ball of orange fur. A kitten, no bigger than his hand, its eyes wide with terror. It was Ginger, its fur singed in places, its whiskers trembling. Daniel felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him. He gently scooped up the kitten, cradling it in his gloved hand. It was so small, so fragile. He tucked it inside his coat, shielding it from the heat and smoke. "I've got you," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You're safe now." He made his way back through the burning house, the kitten a warm, comforting presence against his chest. The descent down the stairs was even more perilous than the ascent, the structure weakened by the fire. But he made it, emerging from the house into the cool night air, coughing and gasping for breath. He handed the kitten to a paramedic, who quickly checked its vitals. "He's alive," the paramedic said, "but needs oxygen and a good bath." Daniel looked around, searching for the family. He saw a group huddled together, wrapped in blankets, their faces stained with tears and soot. A young girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, was sobbing uncontrollably, her face buried in her mother's shoulder. He walked over to them, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what they had lost. He knew that feeling, the emptiness, the despair. He'd carried it with him for years. He knelt down beside the girl. "I found this little guy," he said softly, pulling back his coat to reveal the kitten, nestled in a small oxygen mask. The girl's eyes widened. She reached out a trembling hand and touched the kitten's fur. "Ember?" she whispered, her voice choked with sobs. "Is that really you?" The kitten, as if recognizing her voice, let out a weak meow. The girl's mother looked at Daniel, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice hoarse. "Thank you for saving him." Daniel shook his head. "He's a fighter," he said, looking at the tiny creature. "He saved himself. I just helped him out." As the fire crews finally brought the blaze under control, leaving behind a smoldering ruin, Daniel stood there, the kitten still cradled in his arms. He looked at the girl, Lily, her face still streaked with tears, but now with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. He knew this was just the beginning of a long and difficult road for them, but he also knew that he would be there, for Lily, for her family, and for the little ginger kitten who had, in the midst of a devastating fire, brought them all together. He looked up into the sky, and the smoke made his eyes water, so he focused again on the little ginger kitten. He had a purpose. The days following the fire were a blur of activity and emotion. The remains of the house on Maple Drive stood as a stark reminder of the night's events, a skeletal frame against the otherwise picturesque autumn landscape of Harmony Creek. Daniel, back in his routine at the firehouse, found himself constantly thinking about the little ginger kitten, Ember, and the young girl, Lily, who had claimed him as her own. He had taken Ember to the local vet, Dr. Emily Carter, a kind woman with a gentle touch. Ember, thankfully, had suffered no serious injuries, just some minor smoke inhalation and a few singed whiskers. Dr. Carter prescribed a course of antibiotics and advised keeping him calm and comfortable. Daniel, who lived alone in a small apartment above the town's bakery, readily took on the responsibility. He set up a cozy corner for Ember with a soft bed, a scratching post, which Ember mostly ignored, and a mountain of toys. He meticulously followed Dr. Carter's instructions, administering the medication with a dropper, carefully cleaning Ember's soot-stained fur, and providing endless cuddles. He hadn't had a pet since his childhood dog, a golden retriever named Buddy, had passed away years ago. The loss had hit him hard, and he'd avoided getting another pet, fearing the pain of another goodbye. But Ember was different. He was a survivor, a tiny spark of life rescued from the ashes. He filled a void in Daniel's life that he hadn't realized was so vast. His first priority, however, was to officially reunite Ember with his family. He knew Lily and her parents were staying with relatives, the Millers, who lived on the outskirts of town. He called Mrs. Miller, introducing himself and explaining the situation. "Oh yes, the fireman who saved Ember," Mrs. Miller exclaimed. "Lily has been talking about him non-stop. And you, of course. She's been so worried." Daniel arranged to visit the following afternoon. He felt a knot of anxiety in his stomach. He wasn't sure what to expect. He knew the family was going through an incredibly difficult time, and he didn't want to intrude. The Miller's house was a modest but welcoming farmhouse, surrounded by fields of golden cornstalks. As Daniel pulled up in his truck, he saw Lily sitting on the porch swing, her head down, her shoulders slumped. She looked small and lost. He got out of the truck, holding Ember's carrier. As he approached, Lily looked up. Her eyes, red-rimmed from crying, widened when she saw the carrier. "Ember?" she whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Daniel knelt down and opened the carrier. Ember, initially hesitant, poked his head out, sniffing the air. Then he saw Lily. He let out a soft meow and scrambled out of the carrier, straight into Lily's arms. Lily buried her face in Ember's fur, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I missed you so much," she sobbed, clutching him tightly. Daniel watched them, his heart aching for the little girl. He knew that Ember was more than just a pet. He was a symbol of hope, a reminder of what had survived the fire. Lily's mother, Sarah, came out onto the porch. She was a slender woman, with tired eyes and a weary smile. She introduced herself and thanked Daniel again for saving Ember. "He's all she's talked about," Sarah said, watching Lily and Ember. "He's been a lifeline for her." Daniel explained that he'd been taking care of Ember, that he was healthy and recovering well. He offered to continue caring for him until the family was settled, but Sarah insisted that Lily needed him. "We're staying here for now," Sarah explained, gesturing around the farmhouse. "It's cramped, but we're grateful to the Millers. The insurance company is, well, it's a process." Daniel sensed the underlying stress in her voice. He knew that the aftermath of a house fire was a bureaucratic nightmare, a slow and often frustrating battle with paperwork and adjusters. He started visiting Lily and Ember regularly, bringing the kitten for short visits, then longer ones. He'd sit on the porch with Lily, watching her play with Ember, her laughter a welcome sound. He learned more about Lily's family. Her father, Mark, worked at the local lumberyard. He was a quiet, hard-working man, now burdened with the immense task of rebuilding their lives. Sarah worked part-time at the town's library, a job she loved but which didn't provide much financial security. Daniel found himself drawn to their resilience, their quiet strength in the face of adversity. He also found himself drawn to Sarah. He admired her unwavering dedication to her daughter, her quiet dignity, and the way she managed to find moments of grace and humor even in the midst of their struggles. He noticed the small things. How she always offered him a glass of iced tea, how she remembered his name, how she looked at him with a quiet gratitude that made his heart ache. He hadn't allowed to feel that warmth for a stranger for a long time. One afternoon, Daniel brought Ember over and found Lily sitting on the porch steps, looking dejected. "What's wrong, Lilybug?" Daniel asked, sitting down beside her. Lily sighed. "I miss my room," she said, her voice small. "I miss my toys, my books, everything." Daniel understood. He remembered the feeling of displacement, the loss of security and familiarity. He'd felt it himself after. He pushed the thought away. "I know it's hard," he said gently, "but you'll have a new room someday, and we can get you new toys and books." Lily shook her head. "It's not the same," she said. Everything's different now." Daniel put his arm around her, offering a silent hug. He didn't know what to say. He couldn't promise her that everything would be the same, but he could be there for her, a steady presence in the midst of the storm. Ember, sensing Lily's sadness, rubbed against her leg, purring loudly. Lily picked him up and hugged him close. "At least I have you, Ember," she whispered. Daniel watched them, his heart filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. He knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he also knew that they weren't alone. He had found a connection with this family, a connection forged in the crucible of a shared tragedy. And he knew, with a certainty that surprised even himself, that he would do everything he could to help them rebuild their lives, brick by brick and ember by ember. He knew he was falling into a role, a place in a broken family's life, a place he wasn't sure he wanted to leave. The weeks that followed settled into a comfortable rhythm. Daniel's visits to the Miller's farmhouse became a regular part of his life, woven into the fabric of his days off from the firehouse. He'd bring Ember, of course, but he also started bringing other things. A box of Lily's favorite cookies from the bakery, a new set of colored pencils and a drawing pad, a book of fairy tales he'd found at a used bookstore. He found himself offering practical help, too. He helped Mark clear debris from the burned-out lot where their house had stood, the two men working side by side in silence, the only sounds the clang of metal and the chirping of birds. He helped Sarah organize the few salvaged belongings they had managed to recover from the fire, carefully sorting through smoke-damaged clothes and soot-covered photographs. He even offered to drive Lily to school a few times a week, saving Sarah the trip. The ride was usually quiet, Lily staring out the window, lost in her thoughts. But sometimes she'd talk. She'd tell him about her friends, her teachers, her worries about falling behind in her classes. Daniel would listen patiently, offering words of encouragement, reminding her that she was strong and capable. He learned more about the family's struggles. The insurance company was being difficult, disputing the value of their lost belongings, delaying the payout. The initial estimate for rebuilding the house was far higher than they had anticipated, leaving a significant gap in their finances. Mark was working overtime at the lumberyard, trying to make ends meet, but the stress was taking its toll. Sarah was juggling her part-time job at the library with the endless phone calls and paperwork related to the insurance claim, her usual cheerfulness replaced with a weary exhaustion. Daniel saw the strain on their faces, the quiet arguments that erupted between Mark and Sarah, the way Lily would retreat into herself, her laughter becoming less frequent. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, a desire to help them in any way he could. His bond with Ember deepened, too. The little ginger kitten had become his constant companion. He'd greet Daniel at the door of his apartment, rubbing against his legs, purring loudly. He'd sleep curled up on Daniel's chest, a warm, comforting weight. He'd follow Daniel around the apartment, batting at his shoelaces, chasing dust bunnies, filling the silence with his playful antics. One evening, Daniel was at the firehouse, cleaning equipment after a routine call, when Captain Miller approached him. "You've been spending a lot of time with that family, Thompson," Miller said, his voice gruff but not unkind. Daniel nodded. "They need help," he said simply. Miller clapped him on the shoulder. "You're a good man, Daniel," he said. "Just don't let it consume you. We all have our own battles to fight." Daniel knew Miller was right. He was getting emotionally invested, perhaps too much. But he couldn't help it. He saw the pain in their eyes, the desperation in their voices. He remembered his own losses, the feeling of helplessness, the need for someone to reach out a hand. One Saturday, Daniel took Lily and Ember to the park. It was a beautiful autumn day, the leaves on the trees a riot of color. Lily, initially hesitant, started to relax, running around the playground, chasing Ember, her laughter echoing through the crisp air. Daniel watched them, a smile on his face. He felt a sense of peace, a feeling of contentment he hadn't experienced in a long time. As they were leaving the park, Lily turned to him. "Thank you, Daniel," she said, her voice sincere, "for everything." Daniel ruffled her hair. "You don't have to thank me, Lilybug," he said. "I'm happy to do it." Later that evening, Sarah called him. "Daniel," she said, her voice hesitant, "Mark and I were wondering, would you be willing to join us for dinner tomorrow? It's nothing fancy, just spaghetti and meatballs, but we'd like to thank you properly." Daniel felt a warmth spread through his chest. "I'd love to," he said. The next day, Daniel arrived at the Miller's farmhouse with a bouquet of sunflowers for Sarah and a new toy mouse for Ember. The house was filled with the aroma of garlic and tomato sauce. Lily greeted him at the door, a shy smile on her face. Dinner was a simple but heartwarming affair. Mark, usually reserved, seemed more relaxed, sharing stories about his work at the lumberyard. Sarah, her usual weariness momentarily lifted, laughed at Lily's silly jokes. Ember, of course, was the center of attention, batting at the dangling tablecloth, chasing stray meatballs that rolled off Lily's plate. After dinner, as they were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, Sarah turned to Daniel. "We've been talking," she said, "and we don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. You've been a rock for us." Daniel shook his head. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I'm just glad I could help." "It's more than just help," Mark said, his voice firm. "You've become part of the family." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He looked at Lily, her eyes shining in the fading light. He looked at Sarah, her face etched with gratitude and a hint of something else, something he couldn't quite define. He looked at Ember, curled up asleep on Lily's lap. He realized that he had indeed become part of their family. He had found a place, a sense of belonging he hadn't realized he was searching for. He had found a home, but he also knew that the situation and the feelings were all temporary. He could be transferred, they would rebuild, and he could easily fade from their lives. He enjoyed the warmth while he could, though, tucking the worry away. The fragile peace that had settled over the Miller family was shattered a few weeks later. Daniel arrived at the farmhouse for his usual visit to find Sarah sitting on the porch steps, her face pale and her eyes red-rimmed. Mark was pacing back and forth, his hands clenched into fists. Lily was nowhere to be seen. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked, his heart sinking. Sarah looked up at him, her voice trembling. "The insurance company," she said. "They've denied a significant portion of our claim." Daniel felt a surge of anger. He knew how hard they had worked, how much they had relied on the insurance money to rebuild their lives. Mark stopped pacing and turned to Daniel, his face etched with frustration. "They're saying the damage to the foundation was pre-existing," he said, his voice tight with suppressed rage. "That it wasn't caused by the fire. It's a lie." Daniel knew that insurance companies often used such tactics to minimize payouts. He'd seen it happen before to other families in Harmony Creek. "What does this mean?" Daniel asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "It means we're short," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. "Short by a lot. We don't have enough money to rebuild." The news hit Daniel like a physical blow. He couldn't imagine the despair they must be feeling, the crushing weight of their dreams being snatched away. He sat down beside Sarah and put his arm around her. "We'll figure something out," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "We'll find a way." He spent the rest of the evening with them, trying to offer comfort and support. Lily eventually emerged from her room, her eyes swollen from crying. She clung to Ember, burying her face in his fur. Daniel knew he had to do something, anything, to help. He couldn't stand by and watch their hopes crumble. The next day, he went to the firehouse, his mind racing. He talked to Captain Miller, explaining the situation. Miller listened patiently, his face grim. "It's a tough one, Daniel," Miller said. "Insurance companies are notoriously difficult to deal with. But there has to be something we can do," Daniel insisted. Miller thought for a moment. "We could organize a fundraiser," he said. "A benefit dinner, maybe. Rally the community." The idea sparked a flame of hope in Daniel's chest. Harmony Creek was a close-knit community, a place where people looked out for each other. He knew they would rally around the Miller family. They started planning immediately. They secured the town hall for the event, arranged for food donations from local businesses, and put up flyers all over town. Daniel's fellow firefighters volunteered their time, helping with the preparations, spreading the word. The response from the community was overwhelming. Donations poured in: food, money, offers of help. Local businesses donated items for a silent auction. The local newspaper ran a story about the Miller family and the upcoming fundraiser, generating even more support. Daniel worked tirelessly, coordinating the event, making phone calls, securing donations. He was driven by a fierce determination to help the family, to give them a fighting chance. He also saw a change in Lily. She was still quiet and withdrawn, but she started to show a flicker of hope. She helped Daniel make posters for the fundraiser, her small hands carefully lettering the details. She even offered to donate some of her old toys to the silent auction. One evening, as Daniel was leaving the Miller's farmhouse, Sarah stopped him at the door. "Daniel," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I don't know how we'll ever repay you." Daniel shook his head. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "This is what neighbors do for each other." Sarah looked at him, her eyes searching his. "It's more than that," she said softly. "You've given us hope. You've shown us that we're not alone." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. He didn't say anything, but he hoped his eyes conveyed the depth of his feelings, the unspoken connection that had grown between them. It wasn't a feeling he wanted to examine too closely. He just accepted that he would be there for her and for her family. The night of the fundraiser arrived. The town hall was packed, filled with people from all walks of life. Farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, doctors, families with young children, elderly couples. The air was buzzing with anticipation and goodwill. Daniel, dressed in his dress uniform, stood at the entrance, greeting people as they arrived. He felt a surge of pride and gratitude for his community, for their generosity and compassion. The event was a resounding success. The food was delicious, the music was lively, and the silent auction generated a significant amount of money. People opened their hearts and their wallets, donating generously to help the Miller family. At the end of the evening, Captain Miller took the stage and announced the total amount raised. It was more than Daniel had dared to hope for, enough to cover a substantial portion of the shortfall in the insurance payout. The crowd erupted in cheers. Daniel saw Mark and Sarah, their faces beaming with relief and gratitude. Lily, standing beside them, was clutching Ember, her eyes shining with happiness. Daniel felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He had done it. He had helped them. He had made a difference. But he also knew that it wasn't just him. It was the entire community, working together, united by a common purpose. It was a testament to the power of human connection, the enduring strength of the human spirit. It made him think, not for the first time, that he had made the correct decision leaving Cincinnati. The success of the fundraiser was a turning point. The dark cloud of despair that had hung over the Miller family began to dissipate, replaced by a renewed sense of hope. The money raised, combined with a revised, more affordable building plan, meant they could start rebuilding their home. Mark, energized by the community's support, secured a loan from the local bank, using the fundraiser money as a down payment. He worked tirelessly, coordinating the construction, overseeing every detail. Sarah, her spirit lifted, started planning the interior of the new house, choosing paint colors, browsing furniture catalogs, her usual optimism returning. Lily, her laughter becoming more frequent, started talking about her new room, about decorating it with her favorite colors, about having a special place for Ember. She even started doing better in school, her grades improving, her confidence growing. Daniel remained a constant presence in their lives. He helped with the construction, hammering nails, carrying lumber, painting walls. He'd bring Lily and Ember to the building site, letting them watch the progress, their excitement growing with each passing day. He also spent more time with Sarah. They'd sit on the porch of the Millers' farmhouse in the evenings, talking about their days, sharing their hopes and dreams. Daniel found himself opening up to her, sharing details about his past, about the loss that had driven him to Harmony Creek. Sarah listened patiently, offering words of comfort and understanding. He learned more about her, too. He learned about her dreams of opening a small bookstore in town, about her love of literature, about her unwavering dedication to her daughter. He saw her strength, her resilience, her quiet grace. The subtle, unspoken connection between them deepened. It wasn't a romantic relationship, not yet, at least. It was something more profound, a deep friendship, a mutual respect, a shared understanding of loss and resilience. Felt like a bond, something that transcended the simple label of friendship. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, Sarah turned to him. "Daniel," she said, her voice soft, I don't know how to express how grateful I am for everything. You've been more than a friend. You've been a lifeline." Daniel reached out and took her hand. "Sarah," he said, his voice husky, You don't have to thank me. Being here, being with you and Lily and Mark, it's meant the world to me." He looked into her eyes, and he saw a reflection of his own feelings. A mixture of gratitude, affection, and a hint of something deeper. Something that was still blossoming, still uncertain, but undeniably present. The construction of the new house progressed quickly. The community continued to support the family, offering help, donating materials, providing meals. The spirit of Harmony Creek was alive and well, a testament to the enduring power of human kindness. Finally, the day arrived when the house was finished. It wasn't exactly the same as the old house, but it was beautiful, a symbol of their resilience, their new beginning. The moving-in day was a joyous occasion. Daniel helped them carry boxes, arrange furniture, unpack belongings. Lily, her eyes shining with excitement, ran from room to room, exploring her new home. Ember, equally excited, chased after her, his tail twitching with curiosity. As they were unpacking the last box, Lily found a small, framed photograph. It was a picture of her and Ember, taken at the fundraiser, Daniel standing behind them, his arm around Lily's shoulders. Lily held up the photograph. "This is my favorite picture," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "It reminds me of everything, of how we got through it all." Daniel looked at the photograph, his heart swelling with emotion. He saw the happiness in their faces, the hope in their eyes. He saw the bond that had formed between them, a bond forged in the crucible of adversity. That evening, after the last box was unpacked and the pizza boxes were empty, Daniel found himself alone with Sarah on the porch of their new home. The air was filled with the sounds of crickets and the distant murmur of conversation from inside the house. "It's beautiful, Sarah," Daniel said, looking at the house, bathed in the soft glow of the porch light. "You've built a beautiful home," Sarah smiled. "We built it," she said, correcting him gently. "All of us, together." She turned to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper. "Daniel," she said, her voice soft, I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I'm glad you're in it." Daniel reached out and took her hand, his heart overflowing with emotion. He didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. The look in his eyes, the gentle squeeze of his hand, said it all. The final scene unfolded a few weeks later. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Daniel was invited to the Miller home for a family dinner. He arrived to find the house filled with the aroma of roast chicken and apple pie. Lily was setting the table, her face beaming with happiness. Ember was curled up asleep on a sunny windowsill. Mark was carving the chicken, his face relaxed and content. Sarah greeted Daniel at the door, her eyes shining with warmth. She was wearing a simple dress, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked beautiful. As they sat down to dinner, Daniel looked around the table. He saw a family, whole and happy, their wounds healed, their spirits renewed. He saw a community that had rallied around them, offering support and love. He saw a little ginger kitten, Ember, who had, in his own small way, brought them all together. And he saw a future filled with hope, with possibility, with love. He was no longer the lonely fireman who had arrived in Harmony Creek seeking refuge. He was part of something bigger, something meaningful. He had found a home, a family, a sense of belonging. After dinner, as they were all sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, Lily turned to Daniel. "Daniel," she said, "Ember wants to thank you." Daniel smiled. "Oh, really?" he said. "And how does he want to thank me?" Lily giggled. "He wants to give you a cuddle," she said. She picked up Ember and placed him in Daniel's arms. The little ginger kitten, no longer so little, purred contentedly and rubbed his head against Daniel's chest. Daniel looked at Lily, at Mark, at Sarah. He looked at Ember, the little survivor who had brought so much joy and healing into their lives. He knew that he had found something truly special, something that would last a lifetime. He had found a family, a home, and a love that was stronger than any fire, deeper than any loss. He had found his place in the world, and it was right there in Harmony Creek with the people he had come to love. The little ginger kitten had truly given them all a gift, the gift of a new beginning.